Stories are at the heart of how human beings make sense of the world. This is the incredible story of how planet Earth, from fire and primal ooze, evolved a species we call Homo sapiens. The thinking, self-aware, adventuring, imagining, inventing, and sometimes wise creatures who dominate our planet. This is the story that tells us where we came from and where we might be going. The artifacts that define our lineage as humans go back now about 2 million years. There's a very long, boring stretch of about 1.8 million years in which hominids lived in Africa, procreating and recreating and making stone tools. They did all of this efficiently enough to stay alive, but innovated absolutely nothing. Can you imagine this? Making the same kind of stone tool in exactly the same way, to do exactly the same tasks for 1.8 million years? That's 8,000 generations with not a single good piece of advice passed along. That's because Homo sapiens did not exist until about 200,000 years ago, as the fossil records show. Then around 70,000 years ago, something rather extraordinary happens. And happens so quickly that it's no more than the blink of an eye in evolutionary terms. Homo sapiens start to do all sorts of interesting things simultaneously. We start to make bead necklaces. We start having elaborate burials for the dead. We start making musical instruments, painting on cave walls, making little figurines and amulets, creating objects for counting and keeping track of the movement of stars. All of these things indicate a sudden and astonishing birth of a new cognitive capacity, the ability for symbolic thought and language. Homo sapiens and our surviving genetic cousins, the Neanderthals, and the hobbit-like Floresiensians, and others, streamed out of Africa and into Europe and Asia. In spite of our physical limitations, Homo sapiens triumphed in the game of evolution because of the way we think. And that way of thinking originates in the development of language. With language, we collaborate with one another, persuade one another, build cooperative communities and trading relationships. Language gives us the ability to speak about things that do not exist. Legends, myths, gods, and religions. Not only can we imagine things, but we can do so together in massive numbers, all propelled by things that exist only because we agree to pretend that they do. Nations, laws, corporations, money, the United Nations, human rights, useful fictions that make it possible to build a complex world, to march under a unifying flag, to experience meaning and purpose. Language allowed us to outsmart and outmaneuver all our cousins. The development of language is known as the first cognitive revolution, and it changed everything. Like a kid with a new toy, we have spent the past 70,000 years inventing new games to entertain ourselves, new agricultural techniques to feed ourselves, and new weapons to destroy ourselves. We've built up a universe of things which now threatens to engulf us and throw the equilibrium of the entire planet out of balance. The big question is whether we've run the course of this experiment and will erase ourselves from the gene pool through sheer perverse unwillingness to make full use of our mental abilities. Our refusal to think responsibly has led to generations of religious warfare, to politics driven by blind partisanship, and to a rejection of science and even truth itself. Meanwhile, sophisticated commercial algorithms exploit our vulnerabilities, and hostile nations seek to colonize our decision-making processes. Without realizing it, we've become embroiled in a struggle to retain sovereignty over our own mind space. The good news, the great news, in fact, is that we are now at the place in our journey as a species where there really is the potential for another turning point. A new breakthrough such as we had 70,000 years ago that will take us on a different trajectory. What is needed and what is now possible is a second cognitive revolution. A revolution in which we finally make full use of the capacity of the human mind. In your work with Mind University, you'll learn about the tools for taking control and making the best use of your own mind, how to think clearly, how to resist the subtle influences, and how to recognize your own cognitive biases. You'll learn about metacognition and the attributes of the mental decathlete. You'll experience the astonishing powers of mental collaboration and of the extended mind, and raise your powers of insight around the dark manipulators of the mental sphere. You'll learn how to fine-tune your paradigm-projecting power to re-script the life you're living without deluding yourself or losing perspective on your inherent connection to the world as it is. As a result, you will take a giant step towards what we call full mind utilization, living and thinking like true Homo sapiens.